The political landscape, dominated by a class of elites comprising military personnel, politicians, bureaucrats, and technocrats, has been criticized for prioritizing personal gains over national welfare. This trend has continued with successive administrations accused of plundering resources, thus deepening the plight of ordinary Nigerians. Special Advisor on Economic Matters to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, assigned to the office of the Vice President, Mr. Fasua, joins us on Executive Edge. Mr. Fasua is also a founder and CEO of Global Analytics Consulting Limited, an international consulting firm. Executive Edge on Control TV. Let's go through some quick fact check. The inflation figures is close to 30%. Is that true?
A little bit higher, 31.7. That's the headline inflation. Yeah.
Okay, so we have that right now. The prices of foods have risen even more, 35%. Is that the fact?
37.92%. That's the food deflation itself. Yeah.
So Nigeria is indeed facing currently this economic crisis, and never seen in generations, for about 3 generations.
Yeah, perhaps.
Why are we at this
point? At 29-year high, so that's just a generation. A generation is 25 years, basically. So we've probably had it worse, in the SAP days, for example, I think because we've always been a commodity economy, so we've always had the ups and downs. I was doing some research recently. I found out that, look, every country that's commodity-based will see a lot more volatility in its finances. Because when you depend on whether it was crude oil or it was crops and all of that, even if it was gold that you had, the prices are many times often, determined externally. And so you wake up today and the price of gold has crashed for one reason or the other, and the price of crude has crashed. So you see a lot of that volatility. That's why it's advised for countries to diversify their economy, number one, and also to do what's called economic complexity by adding value to what they produce, to make it more complex and therefore more valuable. When you have that, there seems to be a less volatility in that area.
We're not along that trajectory just yet.
Yeah, we are already on the trajectory, I must tell you, because I was just checking the economic complexity index just yesterday. As at 2010, we were rated as the worst country in the world in terms of economic complexity. 132 countries were surveyed. We were number 132nd. But as at 2021, we had improved to about 128 out of 132, which is not too good. But the emphasis more and more now is on helping ourselves, producing what we need, including the rhetoric you hear from the government of the day. The president is encouraging Nigerians to source things locally. And even yesterday, I was reading another article where people were talking about people who were in the tech space that they couldn't any longer afford to host their websites, with those very expensive foreign hosting companies, and they are now finding very good local companies who could do the same thing, And just now, as I was telling you, I'm coming from a factory. I went to do a factory inspection in Abuja here. A certain company that produces, the biggest in Abuja, produces furniture. Fantastic. Actually, even managed by some Turkish folk, but there's nothing you would import that you won't get even a better quality, even cheaper. So, but you see, there's that psychology. How do you get Nigerians to overcome the idea that ours is always inferior? You know what I'm saying? So we're being forced down that trajectory already, the trajectory you mentioned, to add value to what we have. Even in the last 10 years, we've seen about 4 car manufacturing companies emerge in Nigeria. Some say all they do is assemble. I say, why not? If not, you could start from assembling to developing your own capability. And of course, we now live in the world of global value chains where those very complex products never get manufactured in only one country. So the seats may come from Brazil, the engine comes from Japan, the panel comes from Argentina. and then it gets put together in the United States.
But what is causing Nigeria's economic crisis?
Exactly. So part of what I probably would say is that for too long, perhaps we've been dependent on commodities. So when you're dependent on commodities, you see that volatility. The fact that we're still skewed towards crude oil, there's still a lot of mention in terms of our export capability is still very much skewed towards crude oil. Crude oil and gas, as well as fertilizer, urea, are the two items that we export in the billions in Nigeria on a yearly basis. Especially crude oil and gas, you see something like $50 billion to $57 billion. However, mind you, only 30% of that is ours because we don't have the internal capability to produce on our own. We have to depend on international oil companies, and therefore you have to sign, either you're signing joint venture with them or product sharing contracts or any other kind of contracts, which at the end of the day basically says that, look, they will take the lion's share because we are not the ones bringing the expertise.
But that is soon to change. The NNPCL, Mr. Melekian, says that the refineries are coming on board by December this year.
We hope that happens. Even before December. December was meant to be Kaduna refinery. Port Harcourt refinery, I was looking at something like 14 days from when he spoke. He was saying something very short, or maybe a couple of weeks that we're going to see Port Harcourt coming up, which would be great. You know what I'm saying? But that's just a subset of the issue. The issue is still that in terms of export, crude oil is our main export. If we want to substitute to say that which we export, let us process. That means that we're going to be exporting less crude oil, processing more for local consumption, and maybe export from places like Dangote refineries.
Is Dangote refinery a reality? Because a lot of people are skeptical. Wait, hold on. A lot of people are skeptical, saying that this is just a dominant insult to Nigeria. And even when it comes online, the prices of fuel are very likely to uncrash.
I think that if we are positive and we are watchful, we could actually get the price of crude oil to reduce a bit. Mind you, though, I mean, the price of petroleum. Now, the point is that, of course, it depends on the price of crude oil. But what we're hoping is that the transportation cost of bringing in products from Singapore, where we usually bring refined from, either Singapore or Rotterdam in the Netherlands, where the big refineries are, perhaps that the price, that transport cost, even if it was 40 Naira per liter, will disappear. And that will help us. However, mind you that when we look at where the Naira is today, in terms of the depreciation of the Naira, it seems to have been watered down, this advantage that we would have had. So it is still, right now, thankfully, the Naira is gaining, surprisingly to many people, and there's a shock to their system, especially those who have been speculating on the Naira. But the Naira is gaining, and so maybe when they would calculate the price of bringing in a liter of petrol into Nigeria, we know that the government is trying to say, listen, we can't continue increasing prices. So the idea of this kind of nominal subsidy that's
where do we stand? Where do we stand?
Would actually disappear.
Where do we stand on that issue, that very critical point of subsidy removal? Is it partially removed or is it totally back now?
I don't think it's totally back. I would probably wager that it's partially back. If you look at the calculations in terms of vis-a-vis the new Naira. The new Naira is a Naira that's trying to find its level. Okay? So they had gone up to 1,008, 1,009, tracing its way back now to 1,350, perhaps heading towards 1,000, after which it will stabilize for the next 5-10 years. So vis-a-vis the new Naira, looking at the price of, so I think that there's a small subsidy being borne by government now. But it's also the government realizes that it's a temporary affair. If we can get the Naira to gain in strength a little bit, that subsidy will disappear. And the Central Bank Governor has said that he believes that the Naira is undervalued rather. And when you say the currency is undervalued, that means that you believe that the currency should strengthen more.
Now, with respect to the Naira, you said it has come down to about 1,300. It was hitting almost 1,900 before. What did the CBN do to bring down, what's responsible for bringing down that rate?
I think it was just now the central bank had been doing a number of things, in terms of regulation, normal things, and also following the book to say, let the Naira trade, let us see what, there was a time that the central bank wrote to the FMDQ, Financial Market Dealers Code, to say that they were aware that banks were trading at a certain rate on the table and another under the table, and now you needed to bring everything on board. That was when the Naira seemed to have crashed in the black market from about 900 to about 1,003, 1,004. Okay. So I think what the central bank has done is to first of all say, let us see how the whole market will play out. However, what I think has been very decisive in recent times, leading to the strengthening of the Naira, is that the central bank also looked at the activities of the guys in the crypto space, Binance. What are they doing? Who's buying what? Right now, I think the EFCC and NFIU have asked Binance to give a list of its 100 top customers in Nigeria, and to look at what trades that they've been carrying out. I hope that is true, that information would make it to the public, because it will be a very interesting list to see who are the guys who are the biggest traders on Binance and so on. That's one. And also the central bank laid the rule for bureau de change companies. First of all, delisting about 4,173 out of them. Remember, rice and beans, bureau de change, all sorts of funny names and all of that stuff. So they
delisted.
Yeah, they were delisted, and it boiled down to maybe about 1,000 remaining, about 1,175. And the central bank also said, we're going to be selling dollars to these guys who we think they are on the straight and narrow, even though they also brought out a draft of the kind of regulations that's coming, because now they want to increase the capitalization for BDCs. Maybe we'll have less than 100 of that. So in laying the rule, and then the central bank is now selling to the few that are remaining for now at a certain rate. In fact, at 1,300, selling $20,000 to them maybe every other week. That is an indication of what the central bank believes the rates should be, and you can see the rates converging. If the central bank next week says that, look, we're going to be selling to the BDCs that we believe they're doing the right thing at 1,100, the market will fall a lot further. So they are seeing the hands of the central bank, which believes that the Naira is right now undervalued, and by his action. So it's a variety of actions. People will complain and say, oh, the central bank is sending out too many memos. They're doing their work. They're doing their work. You would rather not, would we rather that they were docile. So when you have a peculiar situation such as what we have, you have to be astute. You have to be quick on your feet and also responding with the speed with which the markets move.
Okay, I'm sure you know him, Mr. Adebayo, my apologies. He told the BBC's Newsday program that the previous government had asked the country's central bank to short-term loans to cover spending amounting to about $19 billion. The bank printed the money, which helped fuel inflation. That's according to Mr. Adebayo. Did this help in your thoughts? Do you think that this has helped the falling Naira against the dollar? Did it help at all?
No, he's talking historically, and I think it's a fact that is out there in the public. The ways and means is what he's talking about. However, I think that honestly, I think sometimes we're being a bit unfair to that former government, because especially as it pertains to the COVID, there were two recessions under the former government. The first one was self-inflicted. It was as a result of a kind of slowness to act, and if you like, some sort of cluelessness in terms of the economy. I blame them fully for the recession of 2016. It wasn't necessary, but we went into a recession. The one that nobody could help was the COVID. And you know what? Every country printed money during COVID. And in fact, the other time I was doing my research, I traced most of the 500 billion pounds that was spent by the UK into the balance sheet of the Bank of England, because indeed they also printed and spent. As a matter of fact, these major countries were sending money to people's accounts directly. In fact, it became so bad, some young Nigerians got involved in what they call the benefit fraud. The benefit fraud was a way of intercepting some of the checks they were sending and diverting them into a different account. Hush Puppy and his friend, what's the other guy's name, who were some of the kingpins in diverting benefit fraud. So the money was just all over the place. So at some point, of course, that's why they went into double-digit inflation before being able to tackle it now. However, those monies are still in there. Because what happened in Britain was that when they determined how much they wanted to spend, they were issuing the bonds. The BOE, Bank of England, was buying and warehousing. Buy and warehouse. That means that they needed to push the money out. In the US as well, I traced a chunk of the money spent during COVID, $6 trillion that was spent by the US. I traced a chunk of it into the accounts of the Fed. So let's be very fair on ourselves. Let's hurt ourselves a little bit less. Really, I mean, it was that's why it's called an act of God. When you have something like that, everything goes haywire. And indeed, of course, it must be admitted that in such a scenario, you would also have a lot of fraud. Just as Nigerian boys were able to intercept checks in the US and in the UK and all sorts, what they call the benefit fraud. They used to call themselves benefit boys. Even little boys in Nigeria, I've seen some of them, saying that they're not going to school anymore because they were now benefit boys buying cars. You know what I mean? Like they say now, the Yahoo business is in a law. That sector, the Yahoo business is in a law, because somehow the last boom was the benefit fraud. So every country issued money they shouldn't have issued. Nigeria spent about $50 billion on COVID. That's what we spent on COVID, plus minus. And so I can't tell you how much of that was diverted, but what I can tell you is that we probably didn't have a choice but to print money and spend, because there was a time everybody was locked down at home. Tax collectors couldn't work. Companies were closed down. Nobody was paying taxes. We didn't have a choice. Are you going to leave your soldiers and police to not get salaries for months? What are you going to do?
Do you believe that the policy to decap the Naira was right or wrong?
Oh, to float the Naira. I think it was a very strong policy. I think it was a very scary policy. I was scared of that policy because I thought that, for example, I would have wanted to deal with the BDC issue, deal with the Binance issue, deal with know what exactly and who were driving the Naira before saying I'm floating. And I think that's exactly how things played out at the central bank. They have to deal with that. So if we say now that we're floating, having taken charge of the other aspects of the market, then it's good. But if we were floating and those boys were playing tricks, not only on Binance, on different other platforms, for example, $500 was moving the Naira. A $500 quote, if somebody quoted $500 on some of those platforms, and in fact, they weren't magnanimous enough. If you quoted $500 only at 2,000, everybody's watching that platform and saying, "Wow!" Even the guys on the streets, the black market guys, they go first to Binance or some of those other platforms to know what they're going to trade on that day. So when somebody quotes $500 for a whole economy such as ours, and everybody's watching and say, "Wow, this money is up to 2,000 naira to $1 now," it becomes a reality.
Is cryptocurrency a threat to Nigeria?
I think it is. Let me tell you the thing about cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is not a threat to Nigeria alone. It could be a threat to the whole world. Cryptocurrency is in the realm of what they call decentralized banking. And decentralized banking simply means simplicity, the removal of central banks from banking. It started in 2006-07 in that beginning of the meltdown of that era that became the global financial crisis, when guys around the world, and that's why you don't know who started cryptocurrency, felt that central banks were too close to investment banks, too close to commercial banks, around the world, and there were too many bailouts. Remember, there was a meltdown in that era, where the Fed had to bail out. They only let Lehman Brothers go. Bear Stearns had to go, but they had to bail out the rest of them, including Citigroup. I remember then, Chuck Henry, Henry Prince, was the MD of Citibank. They made a lot of goofs. They overtraded. Remember, it was the subprime era, and there was this huge mortgage bubble in the US, housing bubble in the US. We thought that the price of houses could never come down. So the whole idea behind cryptocurrency was to say, you know what, the central banks are around the world, they're bailing out their friends, the big companies, the banks and all of that, including car makers who, the GMs of this world, the Fords of this world, who were already in trouble. They weren't innovating as fast as the Japanese and even the Chinese, but the government of the US under Obama had to put money into those companies, taxpayers' money. We're talking of trillions of dollars. And you know what? The last time I was doing this same research, I found out that many of those monies had now been converted into equity. They were never repaid. And so those guys felt that, look, let us create our own banking, whereby using the instrument of blockchain, technology, between me and you, we can create our own bank, so long as we know where we stored the value. And this with this blockchain, which was a crypt of sorts, only me and you could access that, and no central bank. The reason why it becomes a threat is that a lot rests on central banking in today's world, in today's finance. Central banks are usually the controllers of the commercial bank, of the payment systems in every country. Central bank is therefore the instrument by which the government of the day can obtain taxes and revenue, and because they control the entire banking sector. Take the central bank out, the banking sector collapses, right, in favor of the cryptocurrency, and therefore the government can no longer get its revenue, okay, because I can decide you can't touch my cryptocurrency. Why must I pay you? You know what I'm saying? So it becomes and that's where the risk is, and that's why you started seeing central banks coming up with what they call the CBDCs, central bank digital currencies like the Naira, which Nigeria tried to do. I think is still on, and around the world, because the central banks had to say, we still have the instrument of government, and therefore we can move against this cryptocurrency guys. And I think that's what has happened.
I'm also wondering, and I'm sure many Nigerians who are, in the same faith would be, when will things get better
for Nigeria?
Yes,
pretty soon. It's getting better now. I mean, you see where the Naira is already. One thing I must tell you is this: you're going to see an explosion of infrastructure, because at least there's one advantage with the experiment of Naira distribution as it is. The one advantage is that we have a surfeit of Naira at the federal and state level to do stuff. And so the state governors, well, I saw a couple of days back, there was some news going around that the last FAC allocation for February was 2.07 trillion, even though I'm not sure it was up to that. It was over 1 trillion. For January, the confirmed was 1.147 trillion. So what that means is that, in the Buhari days, we were sharing an average of $600 billion. So now if we're up to over 1 trillion, that means there's a lot of Naira for governments to spend. That means that there's a focus back on the Naira rather than the dollar. That means that, especially if we can get, we can ensure that these monies that are coming in are not chasing the dollar. You can see that somehow they stop chasing the dollar. In fact, the speculators are dumping. What that means is that we have a lot of money now for contracts that have high local content. For example, labor. The price of labor has not moved up in the same proportion as the price of everything else. You were still talking about minimum wage, to be or not to be, how much will it be, and so on. But there's an opportunity. Contracts like road contracts, we can have an explosion of that in this country right now, and I've been advocating that we take that advantage, like housing, mass housing, to change the face of our country,
to create jobs,
and of course that then creates jobs for our people.
Why didn't this administration first of all think about that job creation before floating the Naira?
I don't know. Well, they will probably tell you that If you ask most economists, they'll probably tell you that it's not the role of the government to create jobs. Though I think it is. But it depends on how. But of course, the role of government principally is to create the enabling environment for jobs. You know what I'm saying? And now, from where we're coming from, we didn't have the liquidity for public works in Naira. But now we seem to have the liquidity for public works, which then translates into jobs. But however, I think it takes a certain consciousness to pursue those kind of things. But if you look around the country now, you see that many of the state governors are embarking on some of these projects, beyond just sharing money to people. I don't believe much in the idea of just gathering people and just giving them cash in their account.
That's what's currently happening now. Around 15 million poorer households. They're receiving this cash transfer.
Who started quoting?
20.
You said something more poorer. 15 million more poorer.
Yes, 15 million poorer households in Nigeria out of 220 million Nigerians living in this country.
Mind you that a household is...
They are receiving 25,000 naira, which is grossly inadequate. It can barely take you anywhere. How do you reconcile 25,000 naira as a cash transfer to a family of 5?
A family of 5 depends on the circumstances. I think I'd rather go down the Chinese route. The Chinese route is to document each of these families. In the attempt to eradicate poverty in China entirely, each family was documented, and specifically, some families suffered from diseases, some families suffered from illiteracy, some suffered from lack of job, and then each of their needs were attacked on that platform. Not to say that, look, let's just give money to 15 million households, and how are they going to spend the money? Honestly, you saw that there was an attempt. The initial attempt kind of broke down before the government said, let's work this out again and see how we can reach out to people, which is still under scrutiny. It's still under scrutiny. So I probably wouldn't start to analyze the data of 15 million people being paid 25,000 per month. I think that what the previous attempt showed was there was a need to slow down. Otherwise, the money will end up in different places that the government didn't intend.
Like it did in the previous administration.
Of course, like it has always done, even from the time of NAPEP. The NAPEP was the first one that started under Obasanjo. How many people did he take out of poverty? Truth be told, we should have been able to measure the successes and the progress made by each of those experiments, but it's probably never worked. So I think, in the case of China, what they did, apart from documenting, and I've seen President Xi Jinping get into his car and go into some of the remotest areas of China, on top of the hill, civilizations that have not refused to merge with the rest, because you can't sell urbanization to everybody. They just are not interested in going to Shanghai. They prefer the village where they are, but they are poor. And so it's gone to them, documented their problem. But another thing they did in China was to bring in the private sector. And so the private sector companies will go to those remote areas. They've built houses, maybe sometimes it could be flats, relocate those. We take some convincing to relocate people from the mud houses and the shacks that they're living into this nice little flats. And then, they also help them to build greenhouses, increasing the productivity of some of those farmers by a factor of 10. And that was a different model of poverty eradication, where even the private sector companies could make a little bit of money, not necessarily max out, but make a little bit of money, and also see people. As we speak today, according to the data, there's about just less than 3 million Chinese who are living in abject poverty. 3 million out of 1.5 billion. That's quite remarkable. And I think that rather than just throw money at the problem, we need a bit more analysis to be able to say, okay, 25,000 going to how many? Perhaps remember that if you're talking about a family of 5, let's say on the average, making up the household, you're talking of 75 million people getting 25,000 per family and all of that stuff. I think the mathematics is a bit fuzzy. Do we need that much? It's just the same thing that happens when we say we have 28 million housing deficit in Nigeria, or it used to be 17 million housing deficit. Now it's for 28. When are we going to build 28 million houses in Nigeria? It's not as if we don't have enough. We don't have houses at all now. So the point is this: if 10 people will live in a house, and you build 1 million houses, you've sorted about 100 million people out. If 6 people would, you've sorted 60 million people out. So we need to be very careful about the way. I always challenge data. And on a few occasions, I think I've actually been right, because according to Benjamin Disraeli, when he echoed was this American author, which I remember now, he said that there are 3 types of lies: damn lies, and statistics. Sometimes you throw the statistics out. If you don't continue to interrogate the statistics and cleanse your data, sometimes you will be planning in the wrong direction. And that's Mark Twain I wanted to remember.
When will this parallel markets exchange rate, when will it cease?
No, wait. Well, the parallel market will never cease. I probably will tell you that.
The parallel
straight
market.
up. The private market will never cease. There's a black market for foreign exchange in every country in the world.
So why did Mr. President make a promise that he's going to stop it?
I'm not sure. No, you heard him wrong. He didn't say he was going to stop the parallel market. He was interested in actually merging the rates. Okay, and indeed, if you know now, the rate has merged. Because in fact, the very interesting thing is that as we speak now,
hold on,
Okay, go on.
The expectation and the perception that Mr. President gave in May 29th when he came into office, leading up to the next following weeks, was that the parallel market was going to stop.
Well, you heard him wrong, or you interpreted him wrong. Nobody has the powers to stop a black market. I'm even calling it black market, not parallel market. There's a law, a 1995 law, that seeks to give legitimacy to parallel market. Okay, 1995 law that kind of gives legitimacy to anybody can trade their dollars. And I think the intent of that law was to say that, look, apart from, not everybody has to come to government, but you can sell your dollar if you want to P2P, person to person, so long as you guys agree. In 1995, it was determined that it wasn't an illegal thing for you to have $100 and in your pocket and say, listen, I need to sell to your brother. You know what I'm saying? However, that's what they call a black market. Where it becomes a problem is when you're beginning to drive a lot of volumes there. And the world has also evolved in the understanding of money laundering, financing of terrorism. September 11 happened in 2001, and the rules were redrawn to say, look, we have to look at where money is coming from, where it's going, who's funding who, and it became a big agenda for especially the United States, and which means that the rest of the world has to be dragged along. So to that extent, every country has a black market. I was watching a documentary recently, and it was on the streets of Mexico, and when the car turned left, the narrator was saying, well, this is the street where they sell illegal money and where you can buy illegal dollars, where the drug boys can sell their money. And there were women sitting under sheds, under umbrellas. And they were saying, cambio, just a second, if you'd allow me to land, cambio. However, when they saw that they were being recorded, they reacted and said, no. The difference with Nigeria is that it's become the norm. People stand on the streets, they sell. That's where you need to have to slow down. So there's a black market in every state. In the US, the boys that do drugs in the US, that sell drugs, they have a place where they change money when they want to pay their people. There's in the UK, everywhere in the world. But you cannot let that market to drive your economy. And number 2, but very importantly, because you're a press man, is that you will never hear CNN, BBC, and the main news reports on the black market for foreign exchange in their country, unlike we do here, where award-winning news channels will repeat the black market for so long. If you did that in the US, the FBI would be at your door right quick to say, you have to take us to that market that you're talking about. So the key thing is that in every self-respecting country, the black market is driven on the ground properly as it should be. And not everybody reports on it, and therefore when it's driven on the ground, you are unable to find a single rate that determines the economy from the black market. So call it black market, call it parallel market. You can sell to your brother at 1,000 for today, I can decide that, oh, I like my brother, let me sell it for him at 1,100 and give a discount. What's the big deal? So everybody can sell money at any rate that they want, but the official rate is what drives the market. The official rate is the reference one. But what we have done in this country is that, especially the media, has actually elevated the black market, the parallel market, into the market, the main market that everybody refers to. And that determines the economy.
Now, I prefer to call it the parallel market.
I prefer to call it the black market.
Has the parallel market hurt our economy more?
Absolutely.
Fix it.
Absolutely.
So why then stay with the parallel market?
Sorry?
Why then stay with the parallel
We should stay with the parallel
Why
market.
should we stay with the parallel
No, you see, we don't have a choice. No, what I'm saying is that we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. It's just natural. Of course, natural. Okay, let me also tell you one of the reasons. Okay, because if you wanted to, even if the banks are totally empowered to sell money today, but you know that when you're walking into a formal environment called the banking sector, the documentation requirements are many. Oh, do you have these? Go and bring these. Go and bring that. You're wasting my time. Why don't you have a drive-through? Okay, why did you start to have McDonald's drive-through? You pay on this side, you turn around the corner, you pick your food and you're gone, because time is a factor and nobody has the time to waste. That's the reason why people are changing money on the street, because you can just come and $50, you have a friend, you know, who they call is your aboki, which is your friend, and you give him the $100, he gives you the Naira and you're gone. You know what I'm saying? But no bank can beat that. But you see, that itself needs to be better structured now going forward. So because everywhere in the world, the BD now, so there was this confusion between what's a BDC, between the BDC and the parallel market and the black market. What's the thin line? However, the BDC is part of the official market. I said earlier on, the part of the reasons why the Naira is gaining today is because the central bank is now intervening through the BDC. Not only that, the central bank has sold circa $300 million, when the central bank for months, about 6 months, was not even getting involved in the market at all, in the foreign exchange market. They sold, since the new reform started, about $300 million. The central bank has been able to get the banks to sell down about $2 billion or $2.5 billion from the $7 billion that they were sitting on in the NOP, the net open position. The bankers don't like me saying that, but that's the reality. They've had to sell down some of that. You know, of course, we're keeping the money for future transactions. We can't be doing that when your customers are saying they can't even find money to buy for their imports at all.
We are putting it on the table.
So you see all of the approaches that the central bank has had to do. So now that the central bank is in the market intervening, indicating their intention about where the Naira should be, that's why the market is a bit calmer. So yes, the private market has hurt the economy in that era, because we allow the private market to dictate the pace for the entire economy. See, currency is an illusion. You know, it's an illusion. That's one of the reasons that the crypto guys moved against fiat, because fiat currency is what the government says it is, but it's an illusion. Today we could as well be arguing about the Naira at 300 Naira, but we could also be arguing about the Naira at 3,000 Naira. If the central bank hadn't done what they did in recent times in moving against these guys that were speculating, chances are that Naira will be nudging 3,000 today. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. It's what people say. I've studied currencies more than most people in this country. There's what they call the 3 generations of currency crisis. The second one, I won't waste your time, is what's called the self-fulfilling prophecy. If people believe and keep saying that their currency will devalue, therefore it will devalue for no other reason than the fact that people say it will devalue. If people are saying negative stuff about their currency, it will devalue. And I'm also probably close to this. 1981. Margaret Thatcher talking to some British businessmen in Singapore, she quoted Joseph Stalin and said that, look, to destroy a currency, the first thing you do is to debauch its currency. To destroy a country, the first thing you do is to debauch its currency. And imagine, debauchery is even a much more stronger word than destroy, than to destroy something. Debauch means to mess up their currency. So if we know that our currency is our sovereignty, our representation, then we need to be very careful what happens to our currency. So no country needs their currency to just be battered around by faceless people.
That's a good place to let it rest. The special advisor to Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on economic matters, attached to the office of the Vice President Kashif Shettima. Well, thank you so much indeed for talking to us on Executive Edge and for sharing your thoughts on these very troubling economic indices with us.
I appreciate it.